خضانها قرب تلا بدلت طلاوارني ترجان خلبي بنيبا طلعت سكرتها قربا ترجان خلبي بنيبا طلعت سكرتها قربا روشكور مزي جرات لين الخيرات منشي للدوار خشكانا قربا في دشوطانا لوجانا منشي للدوار خشكانا قربا في دشوطانا لوجانا
أغزوني قماية يا قطط أشوراية رب يا إيقار خرامة ممنون قابل شلامة قطينا وادا بنونخ انسهدنا بلي خدستونخ من إيدا لإيدا بسبيلك خيروتا بطمنطيلا قطينا وادا بنونا انسهدنا بلي خدستونا من ايدا لايدا سبيلا خيروتا بطمنطيلا بالطرايم قل بغجش مية برش أرقط آوهاتي كل صيطة من أبرومية بالضاير المراواتي شيخ وقت بشار الهاية بلبس بصمخي قمايا صويانة دون اخطناني قطران على هايا شيخ وقت بشار الهايا بلبس بصمخي قمايا صويانة نون اخطناني قطران على هايا مميتات يمينا مميلا اشتعر بدم مجتولا خط خلط ما طخل خروتا لتنخلت مجميلا هل زارقا يوم خاتا خرر كل دي توماتا وخيخ يؤطرم خروتا
Good afternoon, Shlam Alochon. Welcome to the Assyrian New Year Festival, which this year marks 6,762 years. I am Medora David, and I will be your MC for this afternoon. On behalf of the Organising Committee of the Assyrian Australian National Federation and the Assyrian Universal Alliance, I would like to welcome you all to the official opening of the Assyrian New Year Festival, and I hope that you will all have an enjoyable afternoon. Ladies and gentlemen, can I please ask that you be upstanding for the Australian National Anthem, which will then be followed by the Assyrian National Anthem, which will be performed by Miss Jessica Abdulahad. Thank you, Jessica. You may now be seated. The late Ninos joined the Assyrian Universal Alliance, Australian chapter AUA, in 1980 and subsequently held consecutive responsibilities in the leadership of this chapter. He was the head of the Educational Bureau and the editor of the Naha and AUA magazine until 1990. In the year 2000, Ninos was appointed by the AUA to be a member of the Committee of the Assyrian Australian National Federation, AANF, and was the secretary of this organisation for the last 3 terms. The Assyrian Universal Alliance chapter is mourning the tragic loss of one of their loyal and committed members, who won the respect and love of all those that were fortunate enough to know him and to work with him. May his soul rest in peace. Can I please ask you all to be upstanding for 1 minute of silence in memory of the late Ninos Nisan, who passed away tragically on Saturday, March 24th, 2012. Thank you. You may now be seated. I would like to take this opportunity to formally welcome all of the guests that are present here today. His Beatitude, Madamina Zaya, Metropolitan of the Holy Apostolic Catholic Assyrian Church of the East, Diocese of Australia and New Zealand. Reverend John Hoshaba, Assyrian Church of the East. Reverend Narsaya Yohannes, Assyrian Church of the East. Mr. Hormuz Shahin, Deputy Secretary General of the Assyrian Universal Alliance. Mr. David, President of the Assyrian Australian National Federation. Mr. Simon Isavian, Executive Board Member of the AUA. Councillor Frank Carboni, Mayor of Fairfield City. The Honourable Chris Bowen, MP, Minister for Immigration and Citizenship. Senator Conchetta Fierraventura-Wells, Senator for New South Wales, who is also representing the Honourable Tony Abbott, MP, the Leader of the Opposition. Mr. Chris Hayes, MP, Member for Fowler. Mr. Craig Kelly, MP, Federal Member for Hughes. The Honourable Philip Ruddock, MP, Member for Barara. An apology from the Honourable Amanda Fazio, MLC, Opposition Whip in the Legislative Council. Mr. Andrew Rohan, MP, Member for Smithfield, representing the Premier of New South Wales, the Honourable Barry O'Farrell, MP, and also the Honourable Victor Dominello, MP, Minister for Citizenship and Communities and Minister for Aboriginal Affairs. Mr. Guy Zangiri, MP, Member for Fairfield. Mr. Stephen Karakashian, Chairperson, Community Relations Commission. Ms. Karen Boss, Christian Faith and Freedom. Ms. Susie David, Advisor to the Secretary General of the Assyrian Universal Alliance. Dr. Panayiotis Diamandis and Mrs. Diamandis, Director of the Australian Institute for Holocaust and Genocide Studies at the University of Technology, Sydney. Ms. Ninva Yaku, Master of Teaching at University of Western Sydney. Mr. Varant Meraduchian, the Armenian National Council. Mr. and Mrs. Varujan Iskandiran, Honorary Council of Karabakh in Australia. Councillor Sarkis Yedilan, OAM. Mr. Paul Azu, Senior Advisor to the Assyrian Universal Alliance and the Assyrian Australian National Federation. Mr. Ninos Arun, Chairman of the Young AUA. Mrs. Carmen Lazar and Mr. Lazar, People of the Australia Ambassador and Principal of the Assyrian Dakhlat School of the Assyrian Australian Association. Guests from our Fairfield City Council, Councillor Anwar Khoshaba, OAM, former Mayor of Fairfield City. Councillor Albert Moshe and Mrs. Moshe. Councillor Frank Olivieri. Councillor Zaya Touma. Councillor Joe Maluso and Mrs. Maluso. Delegates from Assyrian organisations present in alphabetical order include the Assyrian Australian Association, the Assyrian Aid Society of Australia, Assyrian Charity and Educational Community, the Assyrian Democratic Party, the Assyrian National Centre, the Agha Putrus Association, the Mar Narseh Assyrian College, the New South Wales Babylon Cultural Association, and the St. Hormuz Assyrian Primary School. From our media, Mr. and Mrs. Wilson Yona, head of SBS Radio Assyrian program, Mr. Salam Adam and Mrs. Adam from Nodra Radio, Mr. Redmond Zaya and Mrs. Margot Hawal from NinvaRadio.com. Welcome to our prominent community members, Mr. Isaac Yohanna, AANF Advisor, Mr. Fred David from David Legal, Dr. Benjamin Dawood, Mr. and Mrs. Tony Jawado from T&J Smash Repairs, Mr. and Mrs. Yogu Khanna, Mr. and Mrs. Shura Mikhalian, Mr. and Mrs. Benjamin AUA Advisor, Mr. Philemon Darmo, Mr. Shimon Haddad, Mr. Louis Patros, Mr. and Mrs. Nabil Mirad and Mr. Alex Jones. A great big thanks and appreciation for all of our major sponsors, which include Mr. Rommel from Fairfield Forum Pharmacy, Miss Susie David and Mr. Fred David from David Legal, Mr. Tony Jawado from T&J Smash Repairs, Miss Edwina Barutha from Mortgage Nest. We would also like to thank our subsidiary sponsors, which include Miss Sandy Arezu from Jet Set Travel from Horsley Park, Mr. Doug Ryan, Professional Wrestling Association, Mr. Jeff Mark from Good Guys, Wetherill Park, Mr. Reni Barhu from Reni's Car Wash and Cafe, Fairfield Heights, Ms. Melissa Kanji from Anytime Fitness, Wetherill Park, Mr. Nabil Murad from Vodafone, Wetherill Park, Your support and dedication was instrumental to the success of this festival. Before commencing with the program, we would like to invite His Beatitude Marmila Zaya to open up with a prayer.
Please be seated. Thank you very much. من قمت همزة من شعرنا بصلوتها وين قامتها شعر برسل تبرخنا ريشيتها طوريتها الكلوخم بنونة وبنات أمتنا طوريتها اتلهيوي بداها شيتها هويا خاشيتها تمنتيتها وشلامة بكلها بنونا وبناتا دينا بخايق وطروات مدنخا وهذا زقاتوخم بنونة وبنات أمتنا طوريتها Australia. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen. You, O Lord of all, are almighty and immortal, ever-loving and faithful, compassionate and full of grace. We thank you for your kindness toward our nation, and we beseech your mercies at all times. O Lord of hosts, we thank you for allowing our race to stand strong in your strength despite all the hardships and persecutions we have endured at the hand of other men. May your mighty right hand be upon us as we joyfully enter the new year that you have granted unto us. Where there is hatred, may we show your love. Where there is war, may we be peacemakers. Where there is corruption, may we show your faithful truthfulness, and where there is pride, may we show the humility you showed us in Christ Jesus, our Lord, even when we face our enemies. We thank you for this blessed country in which we live, a country that allows us to live and worship you in freedom, safety, and without fear. A privilege that our brothers and sisters in other places do not have. O Lord of all, we ask for unity amongst our nation who lives in diaspora. May your Holy Spirit protect us, and may we never lose hope as we can do all things through Christ who strengthens us. O Lord of all, Father and Son and Holy Spirit forever. Amen. God bless you all. Thank you.
Thank you, His Beatitude. I would now like to call upon the President of the Assyrian Australian National Federation to officially welcome you all to today's celebration. Can we please welcome Mr. David.
His Beatitude, Marmila Zaya, Reverend Fathers, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. On behalf of the Executive Committee of the Assyrian Australian National Federation, it is indeed an honor to welcome you to this year's Assyrian New Year Festival. Today marks the 7 years of the Assyrian New Year Festival. The festival has grown from strength to strength, and I have no doubt it will continue to grow and flourish over the coming years. It not only provides an opportunity for all generations of the Assyrians in Australia to come together in unity, it also helps keep our culture spanning over 7,000 years alive. I would like to acknowledge the committee volunteers, sponsors. Your dedication and support is greatly appreciated. We extend our most sincere thanks for all the support provided by the Australian government and Fairfield Police. Today is a special day in the ancient Assyrian calendar. It is a day where Assyrians around the world are united in celebration. We have hope that in the near future, Assyrians in Iraq and in the neighboring countries have the opportunity to celebrate future festivals in a safe Assyrian autonomous region with the same freedom that we are fortunate to experience in our blessed country, Australia. On a final note, I wish you all a happy Assyrian New Year 6762. God bless you and thank you very much. I will now say a few words in Assyrian language. Totanute, مرمل زيا، مقلسق الشيشة، أرخم يقرأ، قيومة حكمة، قيومة شداسا، شتباي أمتناي بولتقاي، بنون وبناتك أمتا طوريتا. بشقالي وناها برسد وكالة من الداها بيما، برخن زياخة ربا، تخاب نيسان رشيتة آطراية، اشتال بوشوما واشتي تريب. آتشيتا جبرتا، ادمجد قارت بيش أخوميتا أخنان أخبر عيوتا أمتنيتا آطراية أستراليا بشقالي وخاها برسد برخ خاها شيتا الكل آطراي كل إيكد بخاينا قداها بريتا أربطة قنجيات الدنيا أغبطا يوخ إديوم خوزة بياش المغزية بأرخة إنترنت قاطراي كل تيول بماري قاطراي كل إيك الدينة تيوي يمدنخا يمعروا يورب أردنا يو أستراليا يم دينات خينة بماري مغرشي توخن ويا برخطة وبخيل مريا علىها ويمت شيتا آطوريتا بويا وتا أم أرقد أوهاتا أرقد آطور يبرتا أرقى زبطنتا بش قالي وناها برسات مضيين أمرا قد يوخن قد زوتها قدني يومان لي وخد ميخي ليل ويوما كشيخي وخد جنجرة وخد جزة وخد خامخ تشقيت أوهاتا تشقيتا آطوريتا يبرتا مزيوخة وخ وبماري وخ أخنان كليتا ناهلا شما آطرايلة أرى آطوريلا شما ناطوريلة ملكا آشوريلة لما سقدير خمداها الشما تشقيتا نايا وآها إيتوتو وآها مردوتا آطوريتا كل داني بماري قد جاروبنا شخلي بيلداها شمة شخلي بيلداها تشقيطة شخلي بيلداها شمة قديش ولداني سهدت يولو دوخة قداها شمة آطراي بماري من كل آطراي عقد قد جاتني ليه ما سي سببية آطراي خمويا نهاها شمة وبتخاميلة وهل دوي متقيمة آطر خيي جان أخن وخيي جان قمت آطريتا وهيتم باسي مرابا طلعن من تهم كل أخن.
Thank you, Mr. David. Our next speaker quoted saying, "I am committed to being a mayor who listens to and engages with my constituents. I am also committed to improving basic services and working to ease the cost of living pressures to improving basic services and working to ease the cost of living pressures to all residents. I will work closely with the community to seek their views and input to Council's planning and services." He was appointed to the position of Mayor of Fairfield City by the Governor of New South Wales. His first day in office was on Thursday the 22nd of March 2012. Please join us to welcome our new Mayor, Councillor Frank Carboni.
Well, what a welcome. Thank you for that. Good afternoon, everyone. It gives me great pleasure to be here today to help celebrate Kambin Nisan, or Assyrian New Year. Can I start by saying, thank you, a little bit taller. Yeah. Can I start by saying that it takes a special occasion to have so many different dignitaries from different political persuasions present here today. It's a true testament to their admiration and a commitment to the Australian Assyrian people and their causes, which brings them all here today. As a Mayor of Fairfield, I thank them all for their support and attendance here. But I think it's appropriate to make special mention of Chris Bowen, the current Immigration Minister, and Philip Ruddock, the former Immigration Minister. Both Chris and Philip, as individuals, have been strong advocates for all migration. Both have made a substantial contribution in making Australia a better place, but most of all, both have made a significant contribution with a deep affiliation for the needs of Assyrian migrants. In doing so, their policies are one of the reasons why today we are able to celebrate Assyrian New Year in Fairfield on such a scale, and both have contributed in shaping Fairfield in particular, making it one of the most diverse, successful melting pots in the nation, if not the world. As the Mayor of Fairfield, I would like to thank them on behalf of the 130 different nationalities that live locally for all their efforts currently and in the past. The Assyrian New Year festivities today not only provide an opportunity to celebrate with family and friends, but they also offer a chance to promote and showcase your proud history and heritage. Today signals the beginning of spring in the Assyrian calendar. It marks a day of renewal, a day of new faith and hope for all Assyrians overseas and locally, a day to remember the past and look forward to the future. As a son of an Italian migrant who came to Australia after World War II, I understand what it means to have come to a foreign land with a different language, leaving a home behind and a family with nothing more than hope. That hope provided to my parents in this great country has now turned into opportunities for their children. I wish you and your families as recent generation migrants the same opportunities for your new year and into the future. History tells us that Assyrians were the first nation to adopt Christianity and the first to have a Christian church. You are a people of inventors and opportunists. The first guitar, the first key and lock system, the magnifying glass, iron, and even many more were invented in Assyria. Assyrians have a strong family spirit, Christian faith that is based on remembrance of the past, unity for the present, and for a peaceful recognition in the future. As Australian Assyrians, you only need to reflect on your rich history to find that hope and opportunity in Australia. Your contribution to history, both past and present, is one to be celebrated by many, but also to be reflected on to promote a future free from persecution and oppression for all communities. Amongst all the celebrations here today, this is what I see in the Assyrian people. A peaceful, united people, proud of their history and willing to use it in the future. For many years now, the Assyrian community has been a valuable part of the rich and unique community spirit in Fairfield City. The Assyrian community has been happy to share its traditions with others. The Assyrian adding to the cultural diversity, which makes Fairfield City a great place in which to live. Fairfield Council is thankful for the contribution the Assyrian community has provided in making this city special. Your significant contribution to our community is acknowledged and celebrated. Council has worked very closely with the Assyrian community. We look forward to continuing this partnership for years to come. As the new Mayor of Fairfield City, I have made a commitment to listen and engage with my constituents. As the new Mayor of Fairfield City, I have recently asked Council to introduce new free buses that will run through Fairfield, Smithfield, even here to the showground, that in the coming years will hopefully help you, hopefully next year, will be a charter bus that will run from Fairfield straight to the showground. The reason for these buses is obviously to help out with cost of livings, and in particular to help out new migrants. Migrants today, many of them, that they find it difficult. They have the husband might go to work, the wife might be home, and it's very difficult for them to get around. So we'll be linking these buses up with all the community facilities to help a lot of our local migrants. As a new mayor, I've introduced a volunteer fund because I believe many of our migrants, especially Assyrians, we need to do what we can to help them. The volunteer fund will be in place to help new migrants to develop new language classes and other programs that might be of useful help to them. Earlier today, I had the pleasure of opening the Assyrian Arts exhibition to be held at the Showground. I would like to thank the young Assyrians from the Assyrian Universal Alliance. Art is important to Assyrian culture, especially in art we can embrace your history for all generations to remember. A picture can tell 1,000 words and a statue can remind us of the past. That's why I have introduced a mayoral scholarship. A mayoral scholarship will take into account education, sports, people with special needs, and of course arts. We want to encourage freedom of speech, and we want to make sure we encourage young migrants to be able to contribute to that. So in closing, ladies and gentlemen, the Assyrian Australian National Federation and the Assyrian Universal Alliance should be congratulated. They should be congratulated for organising today's festivities. Your dedication to the Assyrian people, both in Fairfield and throughout the world, is inspiring to all communities. Today is a day of celebration, of course. There is a fantastic lineup of speakers and entertainment planned for this afternoon to kickstart the New Year celebrations. May this year bring you and your families peace, prosperity and happiness. I wish you a happy New Year to you all. Brekta, Sheta, Atureta, Al-Kuluhon.
Our next speaker is the Deputy Secretary General of the Assyrian Universal Alliance. Please welcome Mr. Hurmus Shaheen to the stage.
توتانوت مامل الزايا كهنن يقير أرخن مغبي من جيبت آخر ماتي رخمي بخيادتي ولاية أطورايا من جيب ناطرازة كل نايت خيادتي ولاية أطورايا قابلوخني وخراب بشينا قدها يوم تشيطانايا وباروخوخ ريش الشيطة أطوريتا على كل بناتتهم تناطوريتا على كل جبن كل شو تاسن اتلهيوي مريا لها أتمرى أخوني ديفيد شيتتي لبتايا ينشنتي نبتايا بتاوي شنت منتيتا آوي شنت خيادة وخبة آوي شنت بلخانة قاقنيتت زدقة أمتنا شريرة ملتن جو أرقت أوهاتا قدشتا أرقت آطر زبطنتا هاويتم باسي مرابا كلوخن قتيتوخن His Beatitude, Marmid Isaiah, Reverend Fathers, distinguished and honorable guests, ladies and gentlemen. On behalf of myself and my colleagues, the Executive Board members of the Assyrian Universal Alliance, it gives me great pleasure to welcome you all to this year's annual gathering. I express special appreciation to the honorable members of the Australian Federal, State Parliament and local government for making time to be with us today. We express our heartfelt thanks and appreciation, particularly to the Honourable Chris Bowen MP, Senator Concetta Fierravanti Wells, Mr. Chris Hayes MP, Mr. Greg Kelly MP. We are very grateful to you for raising the Assyrian issue on several occasions in the Senate and federal parliaments, calling on Australian government to support the rights of the indigenous Assyrian people in Iraq. I precisely would like to thank Mr. Chris Hayes MP for working with the Assyrian Universal Alliance to organize a visit to North Iraq to see firsthand the condition that many Assyrians are living under. Special appreciation to the Honourable Mary Fikara MLC for moving a condolences motion instead of New South Wales Parliament in honour of the late Ninos Neeson and for recognition of the Assyrian New Year Day. I extend a warm welcome to the new Mayor of Fairfield City, Councillor Frank Carboni, and to all members of the New South Wales Parliament, including Mr. Andrew Rohan MP, and congratulate him for his election as the Chairman of the Syria Parliamentary Friendship Group at the New South Wales State Parliament. And to his two deputies, Mr. Guy Zengari MP and to the Honourable David Clark MLC, we wish them success in leading this group. In the meantime, I sincerely thank the past chairman, Mr. Ninos Hosheba, for his leadership and support. Every year, we celebrate this historic day, this heritage that has been bestowed to us from generation to generation, linking us to that great civilization that arose in Assyria in the dawn of history and sheds its enduring light on humanity. The celebration of the Assyrian New Year is the national treasure which we have carried regardless of the adversities that have befallen us. It brings hope to our hearts and reflects our determination for survival. It binds us to our history, heritage, language, faith, and moral characteristics, which we have managed to preserve. In observing this tradition, we too pass on to the next generation that which has been entrusted to us. Yet this is not enough to secure the future of our people as a viable nation. The bitter genocide committed against us by the Ottoman during World War I has left deep marks in the heart of mind of every Assyrian. The cold-hearted murder of 750,000 defenseless Assyrian souls reduced our mass, impacting us dramatically. Besides losing about 3/4 of our population, it has resulted in the loss of our historical land in today's southeast Turkey, caused the scattering of our people, and has negatively impacted the economic well-being of our nation. I leave it up to you to determine the approximate growth of our population were it not for those hate-incited actions. Unfortunately, the history of betrayal and denial is repeating itself. Tragedies, denial of human rights, and uprooting are the best description of what Assyrian people are facing today on our ancestral lands. The recent exodus of our people from Iraq that started in 2003 marks the biggest threat to the survival of the Assyrian in modern history. More than half of our people have left their historical land during this time. Moreover, Christians are facing an uncertain future in Syria, which had been relatively safe haven for religious minorities in the Middle East. The future of Syria's estimated 2.5 million Christians who have traditionally prospered in that country is now uncertain, and the well-being of thousands of Iraqi Assyrians who had sought sanctuary in Syria is now at risk. Although Assyrians have no material role in these political affairs of these countries, we continue to be the ultimate victims of their turmoil, paying the highest price. Today, the international community has an opportunity to effect a positive change in our favor. Our people in Iraq are demanding a province in the Nineveh Plains, the heartland of the Assyrian Empire, under similar political and human rights measures enjoyed by the country's Arab and Kurds. This province will be under the jurisdictions of Iraqi's central government, both contributing to and benefiting from the economic prosperity of the country. This will encourage our people to remain and pursue the displaced and refugees to return to their ancestral lands. We call upon the regional governments and our friends worldwide to support us in this quest and help us shore up our nation on its historical land. We are very grateful to all members of federal and state parliaments who have supported our call and formally raised the Assyrian issue on several occasions in their respective official chambers. We salute our friends in the Armenian National Committee and the Hellenic Council of New South Wales for working diligently on federal and state level to secure recognition for the Armenian, Greek and Assyrian genocide. We thank our fellow Assyrians for being steadfast in their demand for a brighter and safer future for our people in the homeland. Again, I express our gratitude to everyone for attending this year's Assyrian New Year celebration and wish you all a happy, peaceful and prosperous year. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Shaheen. Our next speaker is an old friend and supporter to the Assyrian community. Please join me to welcome the Honourable Chris Bowen, MP, Minister for Immigration and Citizenship.
Shalom Logon. Hoyebrekta, Rishit Shita, Kagulai Ataraya. Itli, Hiwi, Ayashita, Morekla, Bi, Hupa, Ukaduta, Kakule, Untai, Ataraite, Kaudete, Surete, Patel. My friends, your Beatitude, Reverend Fathers, my federal parliamentary colleagues, my fellow representative of Fairfield in the federal parliament, Chris Hayes, my fellow former Minister for Immigration, Philip Ruddock, Senator Fairfield Wells, Craig Kelly, the state representatives here, who are many, most particularly my fellow representatives of Fairfield City, Guy Zangari and Andy Rohan, Mr Mayor, Frank Carboni, former Mayor, Anwar Kashaba, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, it is wonderful to be back here at this great celebration. Can I firstly join in giving you my personal condolences on the recent and sudden death of Mr Ninos Nissen. Guy Zangari and Chris Hayes and I were with him on the night that he died, although of course none of us were to know what was to come. It was a great shock to us all, and I give you, the community and his family, my personal condolences on behalf of all of us here. My friends, again today we celebrate the great nation and civilization of Assyria, one of the oldest civilizations in the world. We acknowledge it as the indigenous people of Iraq, and today as we celebrate the 6,762nd Assyrian New Year, my message to you is simple. For 6,762 years, the Assyrian people have survived attacks, oppression. They have survived attempts to wipe Assyrians from the face of the world. It has never happened before. It will never happen. The Assyrian people are survivors. Today, as we celebrate New Year, we celebrate the contribution of the Assyrian people to Australia. We celebrate the contribution of Assyrian people to Fairfield. But always today, we think of those Assyrians in Iraq, in Iran, in the troubled situation of Syria, in Jordan, in Turkey, in Lebanon, who are struggling daily for a better life. And I say to you, they will always have a friend in Australia. And Australia will always have them first in mind. As we celebrate refugees, as we settle refugees from around the world, I can tell you it will continue to be the case that Australia will take more refugees of Iraqi heritage than from any other nation or nationality. And 70% of those refugees will continue to be, as they have been in recent years, of Assyrian, Chaldean and Mandaean faith and heritage, because they are the people in need of our support, our refuge and our settlement. And that will continue. It will continue as a very strong and deliberate policy decision to support the 1 million Assyrians and Chaldeans who've left Iraq over the last 10 years. The Assyrian people have made a wonderful contribution to Australia's multicultural society, and I was pleased earlier this year to announce the appointment of 40 People of Australia ambassadors to spread the word of multiculturalism and the contribution of so many communities. And I'm delighted that one of those ambassadors is Mrs. Carmen Lazar. Congratulations, Carmen, and I was very glad to announce your appointment. You've done the Assyrian people proud, and you'll continue to do so. My friends, it has been, as is always the case, a tough year for Assyrians around the world. But I finish as I began by saying the Assyrian people have many firm friends in Australia, but most importantly, they have a firm friend in the Australian nation. My friends, Alaha Awi Minokan Kuldana. Basi Marala, thank you very much.
Thank you, Minister Bowen. Please join me to welcome our next speaker, who for the last 6 years provided valuable support to our community and always stands up for the rights of the Assyrian people in Iraq. Please welcome Senator Concetta Fierraverti-Wells, Senator for New South Wales, who is also representing the Leader of the Opposition, the Honourable Tony Abbott.
Thank you very much to my federal and state parliamentary colleagues, local government representatives, Archbishop Marmelis and members of the clergy, Mr David, Mr Hermes Shaheen, leaders of the Assyrian community, other distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. It is my very great pleasure to once again join you for another opening ceremony of the Assyrian New Year Festival. I am also very pleased to bring the good wishes of the Leader of the Opposition, the Honourable Tony Abbott. Tony was unable to join us here today, but he has asked me to read the following message. I am pleased to send my best wishes to everyone celebrating the Assyrian New Year. The beginning of a new year is a chance for us to reflect on the one that has passed and to look forward to what the future holds. It also gives us the opportunity to spend time with family and friends, as well as coming together as a broader community. Australians of Assyrian heritage have been big contributors to our country. I wish you a very happy new year and send my warmest wishes for a successful year ahead. Yours sincerely, Tony Abbott. Can I also add my hope that this new year will represent a peaceful and prosperous time for all? Can I too pay tribute to your community? Assyrian Australians are hardworking, you are passionate and determined people, and your dedication to work and family truly reflects some of the most important Australian values. And while the new year represents a time for renewal, it is also a great opportunity for family and friends to embrace Assyrian culture and honour your ancient traditions, in particular the beautiful language which was the language of our Lord Jesus Christ. The Coalition recognises and honours this contribution. Can I also take the opportunity to reaffirm my support of your efforts to assist those Assyrians facing religious persecution in the Middle East? It is a cause I have been proud to raise and support, both in the forums and gatherings you have had, but most especially in the Senate. The systematic dismantling of human rights provisions against this oppressed race is a source of great concern for so many in the Assyrian diaspora. Can I once again pay tribute to the many people in the Australian Assyrian community who work assiduously in raising awareness of the Assyrian persecution, many of you who are gathered here today. The presence today of so many members of Parliament across the political spectrum and across both the federal and state arenas is testimony to the fact that they have not only taken an interest in this issue, but have supported the community in its efforts to raise awareness of the problems of persecution. Over the centuries, the Assyrians have proven to be resilient in the face of destruction of their towns and persecution of their people. To this end, I have spoken of the Armenian, Greek and Assyrian genocide in the Senate. And through the work of the Assyrian Universal Alliance and the Assyrian Australian National Federation, you have consistently adopted a productive yet dignified approach as you seek compassionately to provide a voice for the Assyrian cause. I wish to acknowledge the tremendous role of these organisations, not only in raising issues of this important cause, but in striving to improve the welfare of your community. Your perseverance in disseminating painful reports from afar across the large Assyrian diaspora is not an easy undertaking, but it is an essential service. Can I, in conclusion, reiterate my ongoing support for your efforts? I wish you a happy New Year and a successful Assyrian New Year Festival. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Fierravanti-Wells. We are one, but we are many, and from all the lands on earth we come. I am, you are, we are Australian. On the 26th of January each year, we celebrate all the great things about Australia, the people, the land, the lifestyle, and the freedom we enjoy. Please join us in listening to Miss Jessica Ablahat performing the song We Are Australian with the students of the Assyrian Dublin School. Thank you, Jessica and students. The newly established Young Assyrians, a subsidiary of the Assyrian Universal Alliance Australian chapter, managed to successfully officiate a major youth function in the last year. Please welcome Chairman of the Young Assyrians, Mr. Ninos Arun.
His Beatitude, Mamilazea, Reverend Priests, Honourable Guests and Friends, Rishit Shitochon Brachtal Idochon Brecha. It is truly an honour to be speaking before such distinguished audience on such a wonderful occasion where we have received a double portion of blessings. Today is Assyrian New Year and it is Palm Sunday. How truly fascinating it is to be an Assyrian in the 21st century, to be celebrating 6,762 years of Assyrian history, and a culture handed down to us from time immemorial. My name is Ninos Aram, the President of the Young Assyrians, the youth branch of the Assyrian Universal Alliance Australia chapter. I'd like to take this opportunity, if you will, to inform you a little about what we have achieved in the last 12 months or so. I was asked to keep it to 3 to 5 minutes, so I've brought my timer. The Young Assyrians, should I say, were formally established just less than a year ago on the inaugural Assyria Day, 1st of July 2011, by the Assyrian Universal Alliance Australia chapter. I say formally because informally or unofficially, the Young Assyrians were conceived here at last year's Assyrian New Year Festival, and so it is our great honour to always serve our friends and guests here at the Assyrian New Year Festival, the house of our birth. The Young Assyrians were established to inspire activism as a means to spreading awareness about the Assyrian question, both to our own Assyrian nation and to the broader international community. You see, we believe young people are recognised not only as future leaders, but as representatives of society today, with a direct stake as both creators and beneficiaries of the future Assyrian nation. Young Assyrians should participate in all decision-making on all levels. Since its inception, we have worked tirelessly to achieve its goals and increase participation from Assyrian youth in Australia and in particular here in Sydney. I can confidently say, looking back at the last year, that we have achieved some amazing feats in such a short time. Had I known what I was signing up for, I might have thought twice, because we haven't had a day's rest with working for our nation. But truly, the saying is true that the harvest is plentiful, but the workers are few. So I'm just going to highlight some of our most proudest achievements. First of all, on the 1st of July 2011, during the inaugural Assyria Day, the Young Assyrians held their first youth conference. The conference, which spanned several hours, was attended by many young Assyrian men and women. Shortly after the conference, the Committee of the Young Assyrians gathered information and formulated a strategic plan for the next 12 months. It was also decided that an annual conference would be held on Assyria Day, henceforth with the vision of holding a national youth conference and an Australasian conference in the years to come. On the 11th of August of 2011, following the success of the Genocide Conference held at Parliament House, Sydney, which was organised with the Assyrian Universal Alliance, the Young Assyrians held a local genocide seminar for the Assyrian youth with more than 100 people in attendance. And we spoke about the importance of the Assyrian genocide issue in relation to the establishment of the Assyrian nation in accordance with the United Nations Convention on the Prevention and Punishment of the Crime of Genocide. Our keynote speaker was the dear Dr. Anahit Khosroeva. She delivered a powerful presentation, and it is worth noting that a short film by the late, great Miss Lena Yakubova was also screened. On September 30th, 2011, an open forum was held. The main purpose of the event was to bring like-minded Assyrian youth together in a productive atmosphere. During this forum, the committee members of the Young Assyrians opened the night with a brief talk about the AUA and the establishment of the Young Assyrians and future projects, and also the importance of working for their Assyrian nation. Several important topics were discussed, including the work involved in promoting the Assyrian cause. On the 19th of November 2011, the Young Assyrians again participated in the Australian Christian Nation Association Conference. Here, a member of the Young Assyrians delivered a speech on the persecution of Assyrian Christians in Iraq, and together with our parent branch, the Assyrian Universal Alliance, were able to pass two motions. First, for the Australian Federal Government to recognise the Assyrian genocide, and second, for the establishment of an Assyrian safe haven in our ancestral homeland, Assyria, or modern-day Iraq. Then coming on towards the end of the year in November, our organisation fully participated in the largest ever advocacy week that was put together and spearheaded by the Armenian National Committee of Australia, together with the Assyrian Universal Alliance and the Hellenic Council. 3 delegates of the young Assyrians travelled to Canberra to be involved with the advocacy. And in an unprecedented development, 7 federal members of parliament rose in the House of Representatives on November 21st, 22nd and 23rd to affirm the historical reality of the Armenian, Greek and Assyrian genocides and called for the Australian recognition of these crimes against humanity. Some of our friends are here today, those being MPs Craig Kelly, Malcolm Turnbull, Michael Danby, Joel Fitzgibbon, John Alexander, Joe Hockey and Paul Fletcher. As members of the Young Assyrians worked closely with our friends and colleagues in the ANC and AHC, we have been successful in garnering support for this important issue of humanity from all sides of the Australian political spectrum, and have no doubt built an irreversible momentum across the political spectrum for Australian recognition of the Assyrian, Armenian and Greek genocides. We move on to the new year. In February 27th, we return to Canberra once again in a joint delegation of the Armenian National Committee, or ANC Australia, the Australian Hellenic Council and the Assyrian Universal Alliance, including members of the Young Assyrians. We travel to Canberra to draw attention to the plight of Assyrian, Armenian and Greek church properties in Turkey, and again advocate for the Australian recognition of the Assyrian, Armenian and Greek genocides. We also do some fun stuff as well. An exhibition last year during Assyrian New Year's was put together in honour of the late great Dr. Donnie George, which we displayed at this very festival. The exhibition contained displays of Assyrian inventions including the wheel, riding, the bow, music, of course beer and the battery along one side, and displays on the other side with reproduction cuneiform clay tablets we used. On the other side, the history of the Assyrian Empire was displayed along with the history of the Assyrian Church. Finally, a special section was allocated for the Assyrian genocide with information and petitions. This year, we have continued the theme of Assyrian inventions that have contributed to the advancement of society, and have chose to highlight some great Assyrian people that have left their mark on the Assyrian nation and the world as a whole. We are honoured that this year the Mayor, Mr. Frank Carboni, officially opened the exhibition. Last year, thousands of people walked through the exhibition. We invite each and every one of you this year, if you haven't already, to please take 5 to 10 minutes of your time to walk through and enjoy the exhibition. In closing, our plea is to all the young Assyrians that are here today, both men and women, to join their hands in ours in working for and upholding the name of our most ancient culture. There is a lot of work to be done, and some say that the fight is unwinnable. But I say, if God is for us, who can be against us? Finally, my friends, today is a day of great celebration. We invite everyone here to partake in the sights and the sounds and the flavours of Assyria. Again, I say to you, Happy Assyrian New Year. God bless you all. God bless Assyria, and God bless Australia. Thank you.
Thank you, Ninos. Our next guest has provided valuable support to our Assyrian community over the last 3 years. He always stands up for the rights of the Assyrian nation in their ancestral homeland in Iraq. Please join me in welcoming the friend of Assyrians, Mr. Chris Hayes, MP, Government Whip,
Firstly, can I say how shocked and saddened, along with my colleagues who met with Ninos Nissen the evening that he died. I've known him to be a very strong and powerful advocate for the Assyrian community. He's been a person who's been a frequent attender to our offices. He certainly puts the argument of the Assyrian people, the Assyrian community, very powerfully. My condolences go to his family, his friends, and the broader Assyrian community. He will long be remembered, as I say, for being a powerful advocate for good. May he rest in peace. Firstly, could I acknowledge His Beatitude, Malice, Reverend Fathers, my parliamentary colleagues from state, federal, from local government. I'd particularly like to mention my good friend Hamish Shaman, David, who gave up his seat for my wife. I appreciate that, David. And Simon Esteban, and many others. I actually get to see these people frequently, either in my office in Cabramatta or alternatively in Parliament House. They are, like Ninos Nissen, powerful advocates for good and powerful advocates for the Assyrian community. Firstly, I'd like to thank you for inviting me to be here today, again to celebrate the Assyrian New Year. An important day. It's the first day in the calendar of the Babylonian calendar, and one which marks very much the notion of rebirth and new beginnings. In my electorate at Fowler, as most people appreciate here, is the most multicultural electorate in the whole country. And that's something I've got to say I'm particularly proud of. I'm also conscious of the fact that we have in excess of 35,000 people living in Australia who claim traditional Assyrian heritage. And obviously many of those reside here in the southwest Sydney. That's something of distinction for us and something that we all should be particularly proud. Now, I continue to work very closely with the Assyrian Australian National Federation and also Hermes' Assyrian National Alliance. I've got to say they give great advocacy to the cause of the Assyrian people. And I'd also like to at this stage to acknowledge Basham Shimon, a good friend of ours over there, who actually keeps one of the young people involved, but I admire his passion and also his attention for keeping me apprised of particularly local issues involving Assyrian people. But on many occasions, I've taken the opportunity to speak in Parliament about the plight of Assyrian people now that have had to exit Iraq. The Assyrian people who are filling our refugee camps in Jordan, Syria, Egypt and areas of Turkey. And it's important that we stay a strong voice for them, because unfortunately they have very little voice on the national scene at the moment. I genuinely fear for those Assyrians, other Christian minorities of Iraq, who the overwhelming evidence is they are subject to ongoing persecution and oppression. This is something that's not associated with the notion of genocide. This is something here and now, something that people are still having blood running through their veins and they're still drawing breath. These people are very much marginalised and they need our support. And clearly, we were part of the coalition of willing that went into Iraq. And as such, I believe we have an ongoing moral responsibility to look to the protection, the security for those minorities. I think we should be looking and striving for a sustainable security within Iraq itself, particularly for the Assyrians and the other Christian minorities. Now, if I just turn to the Assyrian New Year, as I say at the start, this is an opportunity to celebrate the contribution of the Assyrian people to Australia. It's also time today to renew It is the time, as Ninos Aarons pointed out, has been Palm Sunday, and we're conscious of the beginning of renewables as a consequence. But it's also a time to reflect on the spirit and traditions of this ancient culture. For the Assyrian people, I pray that this New Year ushers in a new spirit of reconciliation and peace, particularly for those who continue to experience oppression and persecution around the world, and particularly in the Middle East. I hope everyone here enjoys today's festivities. I know from being here for the last 3 occasions, I know the issue about traditional dance and song, and the Assyrian food, which I actually find very palatable. But I've got to say, one of the things that actually really distinguishes this community, it comes together to celebrate what you have in common. And for us, as I say, I have the most multicultural lecture in the country. I get to see very positively what this community has done to build this part of our world. And for that, I thank you. I will continue to work with David, with Homies, Shehan, to all your representatives, and particularly I'll work tirelessly to do something for those people who fail to have a voice presently in the Middle East and are persecuted simply because they are Assyrian. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hayes. In an unprecedented development, several federal members of the Parliament rose in the House of Representatives on November 21st, 22nd and 23rd to affirm the historical reality of the Armenian, Greek and Assyrian genocides and call for Australian recognition of these crimes against humanity. The speeches coincided with the visit of a combined delegation of about 25 representatives, members of the Armenian National Committee of Australia, the Assyrian Universal Alliance, and the Australian Hellenic Council, campaigned in the largest ever advocacy week, which brought together representatives of the Armenian, Greek and Assyrian communities of Australia. Mr. Kelly spoke in detail about the genocidal policies of the Ottoman Empire against its Armenian, Greek and Assyrian populations. Please join me to welcome our next speaker, Mr. Craig Kelly MP, Federal Member for Hughes.
Right there. Thank you. It's a great honour to be here today, and I'd firstly like to acknowledge my parliamentary colleagues, the Honourable Chris Bowen, Senator Connie Fierravanti-Wells representing Mr Tony Abbott, the Honourable David Clark, the Honourable Philip Ruddick, Mr Chris Hayes, Mr Andy Rohan and Mr Guy Zangari. Now, as we're here today to celebrate the Assyrian New Year, the actual 6,762nd Assyrian New Year, we should take this time to reflect on why the Assyrian community has been so successful in Australia and why they have made such a great contribution to our nation. And the answer is simple. It's because of the respect of law, the respect of freedom, the freedom of religion, the freedom to say what you want against the government of the day. Also, it's the respect for our democracy. It's the understanding that hard work is what leads to success in society, and that an Australian nation gives you that economic opportunity to do so. They are the reasons why the Assyrian community has been such a success here in our country. But as we take the time to celebrate here today, we should also reflect on the persecution that is currently being experienced by the Assyrian community in the Middle East. And as parliamentarians, we should ensure that we use our voice, our opportunity to speak in Parliament against this. For we have an obligation. We have the opportunity in Parliament to stand up and have our words heard. And to paraphrase the great Eli Wiesel, to remain silent is not only dangerous but is offensive. For the failure to speak out against those being persecuted is akin to persecuting them a second time. I've been proud to use my voice in Parliament to raise awareness of the Assyrian genocide and to raise awareness of the persecutions of the Assyrians in the Middle East and and other Christian minorities. And I assure you that I and many of my parliamentary colleagues will continue to take that opportunity to do so. In conclusion, I'd like to say, and I hope I get this right, Risha, Desita, Kata, Hoya, Britka, Alokan. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Kelly. Our next speaker is an Assyrian youth who obtained a Bachelor of Arts with honours in Archaeology from the University of Sydney and a Master of Teaching from the University of Western Sydney. She currently works as a teacher of history, English, society and culture and legal studies, as well as an education officer at the Nicholson Museum of Archaeology in the University of Sydney. She has also worked on several archaeological projects around the world and in Australia. Please welcome Ms. Ninva Yaku.
I am a writer, a scientist, an inventor, a soldier, an architect, an artist, an historian, a lawmaker. I am a king. I am a queen. I am a survivor. I am Christian. I am Assyrian. Good afternoon, His Beatitude Marmilisea, distinguished and honourable guests, ladies and gentlemen. The only way to truly understand who we are, we must acknowledge the importance of our heritage. What contributions have our ancestors made to our lives today, to the modern world? To the Assyrians living in diaspora means we must continue to practice our culture in order to prevent the extinction of our race. To pass on our traditions is to survive. Our celebrations, our language, our religion, our history. If we do not understand these features of our nation, we must endeavour to educate ourselves. Our language and history are the most important elements of Assyrianism. There is no other history in the world like ours, the cradle of civilization. In order to preserve ourselves, we must inform the people of today about who we are and what contributions our forefathers made to the modern world. Writing, the wheel, the first library, the first written law code, the first epic and the original superhero. We should all be very proud of our heritage and we should all promote it. In the same way we promote our traditions that have been carried over for thousands of years. The Assyrian New Year Festival, once known as Akitu, is one of the oldest recorded religious festivals in the world, celebrated for several millennia throughout ancient Mesopotamia. In ancient times, the celebration for the New Year commenced on the 21st of March, marking the beginning of the Assyrian national calendar, the vernal equinox, and continued for 12 days. The 1st of April, or Chav Nisan, corresponds with the Gregorian calendar, which represented the first day of spring. As an agricultural society, this particular season brought the harvest of barley and thus symbolized birth, life, and a renewal of power and rejuvenation of the king. People from all over the empire came to either the political capital, Nineveh, or the religious capital, Babylon, and participated in the celebration. The ancient celebrations consisted of 12 days of magnificent and elaborate processions to and from the great temples of the cities. The first 9 days consisted of prayers to the supreme gods, in Sumerian the god Enlil, in Babylon the god Marduk, and in Assyria the god Ashur. Naturally, since the festival was associated with birth, the creation epic was recited and the story of how the heavens and the earth were made after the death of Tiamat, or chaos, and thereafter humankind from the flesh of divinity. The marriage between the supreme god and the goddess Ishtar was a symbolic ceremony that was mirrored by the king's marriage to the high priestess, which took place on the 10th day. This union guaranteed life in spring. The final days ensured the service of humans to the gods and the king, and through their worship, The people and the land rejoiced. Since Assyrians converted to Christianity, we have appropriated the celebrations, but have not altered its importance to our people. It is our duty as Assyrians to continue to practice these traditions. 6,762 years later, we are doing just that. We know that they have taken away our land and we no longer have a country to call our own, but we must realise that our ties to the land go deeper than the roots of the oldest trees and stretch further than the two great rivers that embraced us. Being Assyrian is in our hearts and in our veins, and we must continue to work together to preserve what is left. The Assyrian New Year Festival in Fairfield, Sydney, Australia is the greatest public display of our culture in this country. This event takes place all around the world. In occupied Assyria, our people, despite the oppression and persecution they suffer, fearlessly wave their Assyrian flag and march in a parade across Nuhadra in copious numbers. I believe I speak for all Assyrians of this country when I express my deepest gratitude to the Australian government for supporting us and participating in our New Year celebrations. Australia has granted my people safety and freedom to practice our culture and traditions and our religion in peace. We are all truly grateful for this sanctuary we now call home. If we continue to celebrate and practice our cultural traditions, we will never be lost to the history books. If we continue to work together as one, then the lives of our forefathers, our heroes, our martyrs will not be lost in vain. We will be living up to the great Assyrian name and the mighty spirit of our people, by the powerful grace of God that no man tear asunder. Happy Assyrian New Year to all of you. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Yaku. I would now like to call upon a dear friend of the Assyrian community, the Honourable David Clark MLC, to give us a few words.
Thank you very much, and it's a great honour and joy to be here at this 6,762nd anniversary of the Assyrian New Year. And as I came in here, it was good to see two great flags together. The flag of Australia, one of the youngest nations in the world, that has only been a legal entity since the beginning of the 20th century, and the flag of the Assyrian nation, one of the oldest nations in the world, going back 7,000 years. And that represents, those two flags represent a great bond between us. And can I talk about another great bond? Every year I see marching through the streets of Sydney on Anzac Day returned servicemen from Australia. But every year there is also a contingent of Assyrian ex-servicemen who are marching. They're there year after year, because in 2 world wars, Assyrians and Australians were allies together in the name of freedom. They fought together in the Middle East in World War I, during the time where two-thirds of all Assyrians in the Middle East were annihilated in the Ottoman Empire, and they fought together in World War II, where Assyrians and Australians were together side by side in places like Greece, Egypt and elsewhere. And that bond where Australians and Assyrians fought together is a very strong bond. It's an unbreakable bond. It's an eternal bond. It's an everlasting bond. Assyrian and Australian soldiers who fought together also died together and are buried together. And you can't get a bond between two peoples greater than that, more powerful than that, more moving than that. That's why it's good to see these two great flags here side by side. And when I see that Assyrian flag, I think of one of the oldest civilizations in the history of mankind, because the Assyrians go back 7,000 years. And I think of the Assyrians who are mentioned in the very first pages of the Old Testament. And I think of a civilization that built some of the most famous cities in all the history of the world. Cities like Nineveh and Babylon the Great, with its hanging gardens of Babylon, one of the great achievements, 7 wonders of the world, and then the first city ever built in the world, the city of Ur. And when I see that Assyrian flag as Parliamentary Secretary for Justice in the government of the state of New South Wales, I think of the legal code of the Assyrian king Hammurabi, the first legal code in the history of the world. And I think also, when I look at that flag, of Assyrian inventions and discoveries in medicine and in astronomy and in mathematics and agricultural techniques as well. An illustrious and a magnificent and an achieving history. These are achievements to the benefit of the whole world. They are the whole world are beneficiaries. And when I see that Assyrian flag, I remember something else as well. Something else as well. I remember that it's the Assyrian people who are the first people, the very first people in all of the world to convert to Christianity. The Holy Spirit led the Assyrian people as the first people to encompass the faith proclaimed by our Lord Jesus Christ himself. And here it is, 2,000 years later, and the Assyrians still proclaim that faith in Christianity. You've never deserted it, you've never denied it, you've never resiled from it. Under the Ottoman Empire, you were persecuted for it, losing 2/3 of your number. Under Saddam Hussein, you were discriminated and suffered hardships. And today you suffer hardships at the hands of Islamist fundamentalists and Islamist jihadists. No one is spared. No women or children, no bishops or priests or nuns. Now, I want to say something about the Arab Spring. Everybody's talking about the Arab Spring. That Arab Spring was meant to bring freedom and human rights and religious rights. It was meant to bring a better way of life to the people of the Middle East. That Arab Spring came to Tunisia and to Libya and to Egypt, and it's going through Syria at the present time. But for Christians, it has passed them by. It is not an Arab Spring. For the Christians of the Middle East, it is an Arab winter. The Copts can attest to that, and the Assyrians attest to that as well. The persecution continues. Assyrian churches are burnt to the ground. Assyrian houses are destroyed. Assyrians are murdered, men, women and children. The indigenous people of Iraq are being cleansed and removed from their own ancient homeland. The genocide that took place under the Ottoman Empire yesterday is continuing today under Islamist extremists. Suicide bombers, where mothers offer up their children to carry bombs to kill the children of other mothers. What sort of perverse philosophy teaches mothers to turn their own children into the killers of other children? What a perversion that is in present-day Iraq. So today here in Fairfield Showground, tonight there will be 10 to 12,000 Assyrians gathered, and they also attest to the fact of the persecution that is taking place in Iraq today. So, members of Parliament here today, and everybody here today, we appeal to the Australian government. We appeal to accelerate the efforts to bring peace to the Assyrians in Iraq. We appeal to the Australian government to bring greater numbers of Assyrian refugees here to prevent their murder. We appeal to the Australian government to bring the descendants of those who fought side by side with Australians in World War I and World War II. We appeal to the Australian government to bring Assyrians here who, when they are here, will respect and uphold the Christian foundations of our Australian society, rather than try to undermine those foundations. And Assyrians, when they're here, will not be looking for special laws, but will want to be treated like everybody else. We ask the Australian government to let them come, and the Assyrians will prove that they love the values of our nation, just as the Assyrian Australian community representatives here today love the values of Australia as well. We ask that human rights organisations accelerate their support for the Assyrians, and that churches accelerate their support among co-religionists. We ask that Islamic organisations in Australia appeal more forcefully to those in Iraq to do more than they are doing at the present time. We, who are part of the Parliamentary Friends, New South Wales Parliamentary Friends of Assyria, commit ourselves to do whatever we can do. The President, who is here today, Andy Rohan, the two Vice Presidents, Guy Zangari and myself, we will intensify our efforts. So on this Assyrian New Year's Day, we give testimony to you that we will never succumb to the efforts to rewrite the history of the persecution of the Assyrians. We will never allow the genocide of the Assyrians to be airbrushed from history in the books in our schools. We give testament today that we will never be silent while that persecution continues. We give testament today that our support is ongoing and unbending. We give testament that we'll continue to fight for justice for the Assyrians of Iraq. And I especially give thanks for the invitation to be here, to be with an Assyrian Australian community who are resolved and dedicated and determined as ever to see freedom come to their family and their friends back in Iraq. And we in public life, I tell you and I promise you, are with you 100%. The Assyrians have always overcome adversity, and they always will overcome adversity. Today, the spirit of those 7,000 years of Assyrian civilization is alive and well right here at Fairfield Showground. That is a spirit that will never ever be broken. Long live Assyria and long live Australia. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Clark. It's always encouraging to hear such great enthusiasm. There will now be a dance performance by the Assyrian Dakhlat School of the Assyrian Australian Association. Our next speaker was elected Chairman of the Assyria Parliamentary Friendship Group on 8th of March 2012 at the New South Wales State Parliament. The meeting was chaired by the Honourable Don Harwin, MLC, President of the Legislative Council of New South Wales, and attended by a large number of parliamentarians. He won the seat of Smithfield in last year's New South Wales state election. Please join me in welcoming the second Assyrian Member of Parliament, Mr Andrew Rohan, MP, Member for Smithfield, representing the Premier of New South Wales, the Honourable Barry O'Farrell, MP, and the Honourable Victor Dominello, MP, Minister for Citizenship and Communities and Minister for Aboriginal Affairs.
Thank you. May I begin by saying Happy Assyrian New Year to everyone here. His Beatitude Marmel Isaiah, Archbishop, Reverend Fathers, Hermes Shaheen, David, federal colleagues Chris Bowen, Philip Radek, Senator Conchita, Feravanti Wells, Chris Hayes, and Craig Kelly, my state colleagues, the Honourable David Clark and Guy Zangari, fellow councillors, and special welcome to the new Mayor, Frank Carbone. Representative of all Assyrian community and distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. In my maiden speech to the New South Wales Parliament on the 1st of June 2011, I said, my journey to this place started in winter of 1918. So everybody was stunned. Am I that old? But the reality was that the journey started when my parents left our homeland. And that was in that year. My father was a teenager and my mother was a child. And I continue telling the story later on. If everybody is interested, anyone, they can go and check my maiden speech. Thank you. As an Australian of Assyrian ancestry, I'm honored to join the Assyrian Australian National Federation and the Assyrian Universal Alliance for the opening of the 2012 Assyrian New Year Festival, the 6,762nd year on the Assyrian calendar. I have been asked to convey both Premier O'Farrell's and the Minister Dominello's warmest greeting for the Assyrian community in New South Wales, along with their best wishes for another successful festival. The Assyrian New Year is a meaningful occasion for Assyrians worldwide. And though in Australia today, we are not welcoming spring, the season of renewal and rebirth, our national day allows us to celebrate the northern springtime, a celebration that our ancestors have taken part in for thousands of years. Today is a merging of old traditions with the new. For the second successive year, we are privileged enough to be able to enjoy the work of talented young Assyrian artists on display today. As someone of Assyrian background myself, I'm very proud to be a descendant of one of the earliest civilizations of Mesopotamia. And a look back in history will show that the Assyrians have always had an interest in history, with the majority of their literature devoted to historical accounts and records. It's worth mentioning here the famous library of the King Ashurbanipal, about 650 years BC, which included 40,000 mud tablets in one place that recorded the history of the known world around that time. It is a pleasure to see this interest and appreciation of our cultural heritage being passed on to the next generation. In fact, I encourage everyone to attend this evening's play based on ancient Assyrian history, which will be enacted by some members of our New South Wales Assyrian community. The New South Wales government is proud of the cultural diversity of our citizens and values the effort of each community to not only preserve their heritage and tradition, but also to share these aspects of themselves with the wider community. And while today is undoubtedly an enjoyable event where we as a community come to celebrate, I think it's also important that this year we take a moment to think of Mr. Ninos Nisan, who recently passed away. He contributed significantly to the Assyrian community through his involvement with the Assyrian Universal Alliance and the Assyrian Australian National Federation. And I know that his involvement with the New Year festivals will be so sorely missed. On behalf of the Premier, the Minister for Communities and Citizenship and the New South Wales government, I would like to wish the Assyrian community all the best in the coming year and congratulate the Assyrian Universal Alliance and the Assyrian Australian National Federation for once again organizing such a wonderful and enjoying festival.
Thank you, Mr. Rohan. Now I would like to call upon our next speaker, who is the Deputy Chair for the Assyria Parliamentary Friendship Group, who without hesitation instigated the formation of the Parliamentary Friendship Group meeting when he was approached by the Assyrian Universal Alliance. Please welcome the Friends of Assyria and the State Member for Fairfield, Mr. Guy Zangari, MP.
Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. I've got some good news and some bad news. First of all, the good news is this is the last speech. The bad news is I'm the unlucky person that has to deliver it. So that's what happens when your surname starts with a Z. But anyway, first of all, ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to take this opportunity to recognise the traditional custodians of this land, the Cabral people of the Darug Nation, in particular for their elders both past and present. To my parliamentary colleagues at both state, federal and local level, in particular the new Mayor of Fairfield City, Mayor Frank Carboni, to his beatitude, the Reverend Fathers and to community leaders. Ladies and gentlemen, I would like to express my gratitude to the Assyrian Universal Alliance as well as the Assyrian Australian National Federation for allowing me the opportunity to share this wonderful occasion with each and every one of you here, your family and friends. For the Assyrians across the globe, the 21st of March marked the beginning of the celebration of the 6,762 year of your ancient civilization and serves as a reminder to us all just how new some of our civilizations are. When you take, for example, Australia is only 224 years young. The ancient celebration of New Year is called the Akitu Festival by Assyrians. The Akitu Festival is a 12-day celebration. In old Assyrian calendar, the Assyrian New Year began with the vernal equinox, which falls on the 21st of March on the Gregorian calendar. The first month of the Assyrian New Year is Nisan, and of course which relates to the month of April. To align the Gregorian calendar with today's Assyrians marks April the 1st as the beginning of the new year, and so the 12-day celebration begins on the 21st of March. This tradition, ladies and gentlemen, has survived the millennia and has been adopted by various cultures that have lived contemporaneously with Assyrians, but those that have inherited the tradition by the ancient Assyrian homeland. Ladies and gentlemen, as the elected representative of Fairfield, I'm very proud of the contribution of the Assyrian community to my area of Fairfield. Like many migrant communities who have made Australia their home, coming to a foreign land, which somewhat can be a traumatic experience. The language, the cultures and the customs of the Australian way of life are unique, and for many emerging communities at times are difficult to embrace, as you can imagine. Ladies and gentlemen, we as migrant communities have a great deal in common. One that we share with many Australians whose origins are from different corners of the globe. It is a desire for a better life, a life with opportunities, and above all, a life free of fear, violence, persecution and war. I can attest to the fact that the Assyrian community plays a big part of the economic and cultural makeup of Fairfield. I note that for the second successive year, this celebration features an Assyrian art exhibition, ancient Assyrian art exhibition, that has been organised by the young Assyrians, displaying the samples of the ancient decoded reliefs, shedding light on the ancient Assyrian Empire, which was once many of the opulent cultures that flourished in the Middle Eastern antiquity. Ladies and gentlemen, the Assyrian community is to be congratulated, and I mean this sincerely, on its quick establishment into the Fairfield community. This festival has now become a major draw card on the Fairfield calendar. In Fairfield, this Assyrian festival has become a unique Australian experience that invites others to experience the Assyrian culture and traditions. Now, in saying this, I must acknowledge the contribution of the Assyrian Universal Alliance and also the Assyrian Australian National Federation. The AUA and the AANF are at the forefront of advocating for the Assyrian community in Fairfield. And I can tell you that I've seen firsthand over the past 12 months how both groups are considering the well-being of the Assyrian community. Now, as has been mentioned earlier today, I was recently elected as the Deputy Chair of the New South Wales Assyria Parliamentary Friendship Group, along with Mr Andrew Rowan, the State Member for Smithfield, as the Chair, and Mr David Clark, also the Deputy Chair. This is a great honour, ladies and gentlemen, for me and my elected representatives, and I will continue along with them to represent the Assyrian community to the best of my ability, and I'm sure our ability as well. As well as being the member for Fairfield, ladies and gentlemen, I'm the proud member of the New South Wales Australian Labor Party, a party that doesn't just tolerate multiculturalism, but lives and breathes it. That's why, ladies and gentlemen, the Assyrian community will always have a friend in New South Wales Labor. That's why when the Labor Party was previously in government, we recognised the importance of cultural heritage and doubled funding to the community language schools across the state. In concluding my address to you today, I would sincerely like to express my deepest condolences to the family of Mr Ninos Nissen. It's been mentioned here before today, ladies and gentlemen, that Ninos' sudden passing has left a gaping hole in our community. Ninos, no doubt, has left us early. However, we all know that by the grace of God, he is looking on us today from the Lord's kingdom. And in all the celebrations today, I would ask that you keep some time aside to consider Ninos' contribution to the Assyrian community, and I also ask, in a special way in your prayers, that you ask the Lord to look after his family that have been left behind so suddenly. So to each and every one of you, ladies and gentlemen, I wish you all a very happy Assyrian New Year. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr Zangari. Now, before the award presentation and the conclusion of the program for today, I would like to thank you all sincerely for accepting our invitation and for the inspiring presentations by all speakers. We wish you all the best in your future endeavours. We also wish to express our sincere appreciation to today's sponsors, artists, singers, the young Assyrians, youth of the Assyrian Universal Alliance, Australia Association for their remarkable contribution in today's activities. Our well-known artist, Mr. Ashaya Khaya, for creating our banners, Mr. Edward Haydu for the video production, Mr. Simon Israel from M1 Media Production, Ms. Maureen Aramya for her decorations, and Mr. Walter Lolham for his photography. Mr. and Mrs. George and Shamiran Badal for preparing all the costumes for the dancing and drama groups today. I will now call upon Mr. Hormuz Shaheen, the Deputy Secretary-General of the Assyrian Universal Alliance, and also the Honourable Philip Ruddick MP, Member for Barowra, Secretary of the Shadow Cabinet, to come to the stage to present this year's award recipient.
convened in Iran during October 2011, has nominated this year's Youth Award to an active Assyrian from Australia for his dedication, advice, and outstanding lobbying efforts to promote the Assyrian cause, and for being one of the driving forces behind the success of the Assyrian New Year Festival. I am pleased to announce that this year's AUA Youth Award goes to Mr. Paul Azul. For his outstanding and significant contribution to lobby the Assyrian case in Australia. I also would like the Honourable Philip Radok MP to present this award to Mr. Azul.
While Paul is arriving, let me just say congratulations. The advocacy is particularly important. I acknowledge the Metropolitan, Reverend Fathers, Minister, Parliamentary colleagues, Mayor, councillors, David, friends. I'm delighted to be able to make this presentation. Today you've heard many speeches, and I have been suitably impressed with the knowledge, particularly of my colleagues, of the issues that confront the Assyrian peoples. But for my own part, there is a particularly difficult conundrum that has to be addressed. And that is, how do you help those people who are displaced? Australia has always helped displaced people. But how do you maintain a Christian presence in the birthplace of Christendom? And for all of us, that's going to be a particular challenge to address that conundrum, and I hope we can do so very positively for the Assyrian people. Now, Paul, congratulations. I'm delighted to be able to present this award to you.
David and all the team at the Assyrian Universal Alliance for their hard work and dedication for the Assyrian nation. It's an honour and a privilege to receive such an award, as there is nothing more rewarding than working for one's community, especially a community under attack back in the Mideast. The Assyrians, the indigenous people of Iraq, whose empire spanned 7,000 years, today find themselves left out in the new Iraq after the fall of the Saddam regime. Today we are not referred to as Assyrians, but rather as religious minorities. That's right, religious minorities. The agenda to slowly eliminate our history so they can rewrite history. I ask that all members of Parliament, especially our federal members, to think of how they can help and make a real difference to the Assyrians back home who are struggling for survival. We have a duty and obligation in the international community. Thank you. Thank you.
I would now like to call upon Councillor Frank Carboni, Mayor of Fairfield, to come to the stage to present the next award.
I would like also to call on my colleague, Mr. David, to come to the stage as well. Thank you. Every year, the Assyrian Australian National Federation and the Assyrian Universal Alliance Australian chapter present awards to well-known individuals in recognition of their service to the Assyrian community. I am pleased to announce that this year's Assyrian Universal Alliance Community Award Service goes to Ms. Carmen Lazar, People of Australia Ambassador and Principal of the Assyrian Diplomat School of the Assyrian Australian Association, in recognition of her outstanding contribution and significant role in organizing school activities for the last 7 consecutive Assyrian New Year festivals in Sydney, and for years of devotion to community work, teaching the Assyrian language, and for her substantial efforts in preserving the Assyrian culture. Please join us to welcome Mrs. Lazar.
It's a privilege to be standing here as an ambassador, Assyrian of Australia. Also would like to congratulate the Assyrian Universal Alliance and Assyrian National Federation for organizing the festival each year. As the principal of the Assyrian Diplomat School of Assyrian Australian Association, I have been fortunate enough to personally see the hard work that goes through activities and such successful event.
Now, to proceed with the official opening of the Assyrian New Year celebration, we will ask upon our new Mayor of Fairfield City Councillor Frank Carboni to declare the official opening of the Assyrian New Year Festival 6762.
Ladies and gentlemen, the speeches are almost over. I know everyone wants to party. Just want to make sure that everyone drinks and doesn't drink and drive. So I want to wish you all, the Assyrian people, a Happy New Year. I hope that all the opportunities and wishes come true, but more importantly, I hope to wish you all the best of health and to be able to see you here again next year at the showground. God bless you all. Hana Ladia Bibta Ahun, Rushma It, Aha Shita, Gata, Shito Huyu, Brikta, Alaha Minohun.